All right, toxic wood. Toxic wood can cause allergies and respiratory problems. Let's start with respiratory problems with wood dust. From an article published by AAW, David Ramsey, Phoenix area segmented turner and retired healthcare executive, provides this. I turned for 4 or 5 years and only occasionally wore a mask. Now I have asthma from breathing wood dust. Bad situation. I pay for those days for 3 days if I even get a puff of sawdust in the nose. I recommend moving as much air as you can when you sand. Take good care of your lungs. It's the tiny particles which you breathe in that damage your lungs. Think about the secondary smoke, and just you can see it, but you're not seeing the ashes, just the smoke. The dust from 1 to 10 microns in diameter is the nasty stuff that's harmful to lung cells and causes respiratory problems, coughing, nosebleeds, sinus problems, emphysema, and bronchitis. That may explain why you develop a cold after you spend a lot of time sanding. The finer you sand, the finer the dust particles. By comparison, wisps of tobacco smoke fit in the range of 0.01 to 1.0 microns. Of course, you know what damage tobacco smoke does to healthy lungs. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, says that exposure to wood dust has long been associated with a variety of adverse effects, including dermatitis, allergic respiratory effects, mucosal and non-allergic respiratory effects, and even cancer. Now, what are examples of the health issues associated with wood dust? From the Canadian Center of Occupational Health and Safety, they say irritation, coughing, or sneezing are caused by dust itself. Dermatitis is common and may be caused by the chemicals in the wood. For dermatitis, the skin may become red, itchy, dry, or blister. Allergic contact dermatitis may also develop. Respiratory system effects include decreased lung capacity and allergic reactions in the lungs, such as hypersensitivity pneumonitis, inflammation of the walls of the ear sacs and small airways, and occupational asthma. Hypersensitivity pneumonitis may develop within hours or days following the exposure and is often confused with cold or flu symptoms because it begins with headaches, chills, sweating, nausea, breathlessness, etc. Tightness of the chest and breathlessness can be severe, and the condition can worsen with the continued exposure. Some hypersensitivity pneumonitis conditions may be caused by moles that grow on the wood and not the wood itself. Occupational asthma may also develop. Western cedar is a wood that has a clear association with the development of asthma. Toxic effects are specific to the species of wood. Chemicals in the wood may be absorbed in the body through skin, lungs, or digestive system. And when the body absorbs the chemical may cause headaches, loss of weight, breathlessness, giddiness, cramps, and irregular heartbeat. Now, spalted wood. A note on spalted wood and your health per Dr. Siri Robinson, who's got a PhD in spalting. There's a misconception among woodturners that working with spalted wood is particularly dangerous. Most fungal spores are about as harmful to a healthy adult as wood dust. So, if you sand spalted wood, wear a mask. However, people with immune system disorders should not work with spalted wood. Wood-related allergies. Some wood and some wood dust can contain allergens. An allergen is a type of antigen that produces an abnormally vigorous immune response in which the immune system fights off a perceived threat that would otherwise be harmless to the body. In North America, the most common examples are poison ivy and poison oak. I'll address the most common types of allergic reaction, and that's to poison ivy. And the reason is that it often grows up the side of a tree in a vine. Poison ivy vines on the wood. Poison ivy is common through most of the U.S. with the exception of Alaska, Hawaii, and parts of the West Coast. Other related plants are poison sumac and poison oak. Why poison ivy is dangerous. All parts of the plant contain a resinous oil called urushiol, which is a potent allergen. Individuals suffer insensitivity. Usually a person has to be exposed at least once previously to become sensitized and develop an allergic reaction. The typical skin reaction of an intensely itchy rash often appears within 24 hours after exposure. In some people, the rash progresses to serious blistering and may require steroid treatment. Now, time for some war stories. For some of you you veterans that are familiar with the difference between a war story and a fairy tale. A fairy tale starts off with once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away, and a war story starts off with this is no. In ROTC summer camp many years ago, I developed an extreme poison ivy rash on my hands with blisters the size of golf balls. At least 2 fellas in my platoon were wound up getting hospitalized for at least a couple of days. However, on the positive side, my dad at the outbreak of World War II in training wound up in the hospital with a bad poison ivy rash when he met my mother, who was an Army nurse. So it can't all be bad. Sometimes bad events can lead to good outcomes. So my specific warning is be cautious with wood blanks that have a vine attached. Not everyone is allergic to poison ivy. Some folks, like my wife, went through life without being allergic, so she couldn't recognize it when she saw it. Late in life, she started pulling down vines in the backyard and had a severe reaction. Me, I've always been allergic. I can walk into the woods and somebody might as well take a can of Day-Glo orange spray paint, and that's what it looks like to me. I can see that poison ivy from a long ways off because I've always been allergic to it. So we've talked about dermatitis, reaction from skin to the oil in poison ivy. Some turners can also experience dermatitis from contact with the oils in many exotic, especially rosewoods like cocobolo. I had a wood turner in my club that was cutting some pen blanks on a table saw. He cut a half a dozen pen blanks, had a severe reaction to cocobolo dust just from the table saw. Let's talk about sensitizing woods. What's a sensitizer? Well, I have a link in the wood database that provides information on toxicity and allergic risks to a number of woods in the show notes. Per the wood database, you've probably also heard the term desensitized, usually in reference to violent movies or images, meaning that we start off as naturally being sensitive to something, and upon more and more frequent exposure, we become less and less sensitive to the effects. Well, with some woods that have been classified as a sensitizer, the opposite is true. The more we're exposed to a wood's dust or fine particles, the more sensitive we get to the exposure, and the more severe and adverse the reactions become. If you've ever had an allergic reaction to any wood that has been identified as a sensitizer, use extreme caution in handling or using that species and related species in future instances. Some have reactions so severe that they simply have had to stop and discontinue using certain woods and species altogether. Cocobolo is notorious in this regard. They say there's 2 types of cocobolos, those that are allergic to cocobolo and those that will become allergic to cocobolo. I'm going to list some woods here based on that database that, like I say, I've got in the show notes, and I'm not going to go into detail. There's different types of effects. It could be respiratory, it could be an irritant, it could be a sensitizer, it could cause asthma. I'm not going to go into all the details. I'm just going to list some of them on a 1 to 5 scale. Western red cedar, 5. Maple, 3. Black walnut, 2. Ash, 2. Oak, 2. Black cherry, 1. Elm, 1. Persimmon, 1. Pressure treated lumber, Lord only knows I wouldn't want to turn it in my shop. Anaphylaxis is a severe allergic reaction that is rapid in onset and may cause death. It typically causes more than one of the following: an itchy rash, throat or tongue swelling, shortness of breath, vomiting, lightheadedness, low blood pressure, and these symptoms typically come over minutes or hours, and they could lead to hospitalization or death. Prevention. Limit your exposure to wood dust by doing the following things. Number 1, use vacuum dust collection in your shop and keep your shop ventilated with fresh air. Number 2, use protective equipment while woodworking. Maybe a hazmat suit may be overkill, but wear a dust mask, goggles, or a full face respirator, and a protective barrier cream on your arms or exposed skin. Immediately after woodworking, change your clothes, wash them, and take a shower. This will prevent transferring wood dust to your house or where you or your family may be repeatedly exposed to it. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a healthcare professional. I got most of this doing my research, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn last night. So If anything I said you disagree or you want to add to, please leave it in the comments below. This is our forum. Don't feel like you've got to wait for me to respond to someone's comments if you've got something to share. And remember, y'all stay safe out there and come on back here.